second. Could you be following bad Etsy advice? Etsy advice that is slowing the growth of your business down? There are a lot of misunderstood Etsy strategies out there. And today we're going to talk about what is true and what is false when it comes to Etsy tips and tricks. True or false? Etsy is a totally passive stream of income. We're going to jump into this one, but I just want to remind you to stick around to the end because we are going to be hitting topics like shadow banning, not getting views and visits. We are going to be hitting topics about oversaturation in Etsy, so you're not going to want to miss some of those coming up. True or false, is Etsy a passive stream of income? Well, it's mostly false, but later it becomes a little more true. So what I mean by that is it is a lot of work in the beginning, and it's important to come into this in the right headspace, understanding this properly. Otherwise, you're going to be a person that gives up too soon because you didn't have the right expectation. And so if you find yourself giving up within that first 1 to 3, 6 months, 7, 8 months even, you really just didn't have it in your head how much work it was really going to be before it started to pay off. In the beginning, it is a lot of work. You are learning a lot of new skills. They're not hard skills. They're pretty easy skills to learn, but they are new. So there is an element of difficulty that comes with learning new skills. You're learning how to design. You're learning how to list. You're learning how to do SEO, search engine optimization. You're titling your tags. You're learning how to do market research. You are learning, possibly, if you are a POD person, how to work with the POD company, how to sync things. You are learning how to use the design apps. If you're a handmade person, you're learning how to get your inventory and how to keep up with those kinds of things. You also have to list many items so that you can start getting views and you can start getting visits, and you got to get better at this, all of these things. You've got to get better and better at it by listing more and more items until you get good at it. Because once you get good at it, it'll be a lot easier to get your business going. So yes, that is a lot of work in the beginning, and it is several months of not really making much money in return. However, fast forward, at this point, I'm a little over 2 years in, and if I wanted to work 1 to 3 hours a day is what it would take me. Some days 1 hour, closer to the holidays it would be more like 3 hours, and I could make a 6-figure salary. A 6-figure salary? That still sounds crazy to me. A 6-figure salary working 1 to 3 hours a day. Now I do put a lot more in because that would be just kind of keeping up with business. I am designing a lot of new things, and I'm listening still to, strategies about pricing and strategies, things that I haven't implemented in my shop before, and playing around with those ideas. I'm constantly learning. So currently, with me trying to double my Etsy shop from last year, I am putting about 35 hours a weekend into my Etsy shop. But I do believe that after you get this going, it's semi-passive. You can make so much more money for your time than I ever could have trading my time for teaching. Here you are trading your time to list some items that will keep making you money for a long time to come. So it's a totally different, mindset of how to make money. Something else on this topic before we move on to our next true or false. Think about this. According to Forbes, it takes between 18 to 24 months for most new businesses to start being profitable. 18 to 24 months. But if you really work in your Etsy shop, it does not take that long to be profitable. And there's not much upfront costs. In terms of businesses, opening businesses, it's a really low cost to open this business. There's very few things that you have to get. Maybe a design app, some mock-ups, and 20 cents per listing that you're putting out there. So it's a very low amount of money that you have to put out. And then you're going to see profit if you get good at these things that we're talking about and really, practice these things and do your market research and all that stuff. You're going to see profit a lot earlier than that typical 18 to 24 months. True or false? Etsy has too many sellers and is oversaturated. Before we call this one true or false, let's look at a couple of facts. First, this past June, Etsy had 377.4 million visits. All potential shoppers heading on over to the Etsy platform to do some shopping. And according to this source, Etsy had 96.3 million active buyers in December of 2021. And for a fun fact there at the bottom, they compare this to 2012 and show that this is 10 times larger than it was in 2012. So that's a huge amount of growth for Etsy bringing buyers to the platform. Now that we've talked about traffic and shoppers, let's talk for a second about sellers. There are 7.5 million sellers on Etsy. But do keep in mind that this is everybody that has opened a shop on Etsy, and there are many shops that were opened and kind of abandoned or never really taken seriously, but they still count as being a seller. And according to Artisan Hopper, Etsy sellers make an average of $2,900 annually, which, yes, I know that might be disappointing, but don't forget that most people probably only sell a few items and don't actually take their shop seriously, or just didn't list very many things, or gave up and abandoned their shop, but still count in that average annual income. While some Etsy sellers make more than $100,000 per year. And according to this source, while the exact numbers vary depending on the dedication of the group being surveyed, it's safe to say around 20% of sellers make $50,000 or more. And I think these are pretty awesome statistics to shoot for when you are actually putting the effort and the amount of studying that needs to go into getting your shop making these kinds of numbers. So is Etsy oversaturated? I call that false. I do not believe that, not for one little second. There is space for you on the platform, and even Amazon, who got going much earlier than Etsy, there's still space there for people to be successful. So certainly with Etsy, there is still space for you to be successful and make great money. And that leads us to one of my favorite ones here, true or false. If you didn't get started in 2020, it's just too late now. I am calling this one a big fat false. If you have heard anyone say this or suggest this, dismiss this from your mind. That is such a limiting belief. I even had someone comment on one of my very first videos, very angry with me about sharing my story and sharing, about this business model, and said that it's not possible anymore, that's only for 2020, and how dare I, spread information that wasn't true. Please do not subscribe to that type of thinking. It will so lock you up and keep you from getting somewhere really fantastic. So when I first started, I was listening to the videos in 2020, and I didn't get started until the very end of 2020 in October. And when I started to get my feet wet with this and was trying to listen to as much as I could and was opening my shop, in those first months, I heard people saying, well, it's too late to get started on Etsy. You shouldn't waste your time with that because POD already started. I was late to the game with POD. It already started like a year and a half or something, maybe a year and a half before I joined it. And in case you don't know what POD is, that's print on demand. So that's where the print company is printing your design, shipping it for you. So you're kind of the middle person. You're designing and the print on demand company is printing it and shipping it for you. And that was a relatively new thing that had come up. And I was like maybe a year and a half after they had gone ahead and made it available to sync with Etsy so that the platforms could, Printful or Printify, these print shop companies could communicate and sync up with Etsy. So they were saying if you're a POD person wanting to do t-shirts, it's just too late. You should have gotten into it right when they made the switch to POD. And I remember feeling a little like the wind was taken out of my sails. And I needed to believe that it was going to work in order to put all of the work that it took into it to get it going. And if I didn't believe that it could work, there was no way I could put all of that effort and energy into this, right? So I needed to believe it was possible. I needed to have hope. And hearing that really let the wind out of my sails. I listened to some of the other people that I trusted more, that I'd first, was first listening to. It was Life Hacker Couple. And while listening to them, I was building myself back up and just hearing their story and hearing what they felt was possible. And I felt that they were genuine in telling me truly what they believed. So I threw myself gung-ho. And I didn't get successful in 2020. And I wasn't successful until toward the end of 2021. And I have friends getting involved in this now and family members that have gotten involved in it within the last 7-8 months that are getting successful. So that is just a bunch of baloney. It's false. And just to drive this home just a little bit further, let's take a second to look at this graphic here. How much gross merchandise sales volume does Etsy generate? Look at how those bars just keep kind of going up there. The last two bars are 2020 and 2021. So it is certainly not too late. We see a really nice big incline from 2020 to 21 in sales on Etsy. And we learn here that in 2021, Etsy's revenue growth was 35%. So it went up 35% from the year 2020. And Etsy spent $654.8 million on marketing in 2021 alone. That is a 132% increase from 2020. So Etsy even upped their game in 2021, and they're a growing platform with more and more opportunity. So here we see in 2019, there was $215.6 million spent on marketing, which in 2020, during Corona times, it went up to $500.8 million. But then in 2021, increased again to $654.8 million that Etsy is spending on marketing to bring new shoppers to the platform. So for anyone still doubting that it's still possible to have a successful Etsy shop as compared to having a successful Etsy shop had you got started in early 2020, which, don't get me wrong, yes, that would have been a benefit of selling online items on Etsy before everyone got locked down. So if you'd started at the beginning of 2020, certainly an advantage. I wish I'd gotten started at the beginning of 2020, but it is absolutely not too late. And without getting too mathy on you, I'm going to point a ratio out that is kind of matching up from the bottom to the top here. The bottom are the Etsy sellers, the number of Etsy sellers by year. The top are the number of buyers per year. So if you go over to 2012, we see there are 830,000 sellers and there are 9.3 million buyers. Now if we go over to 2021, we see there are 7.5 million sellers and there are 96.3 million buyers. And if you figure out the ratio between sellers to buyers in 2012 and then compare it to the ratio of 2021 to sellers and buyers, it is very, very, very similar, which would mean that we could say the same opportunity to make sales that there was in 2012 exists now in 2020, or at least in 2021. We don't have the numbers for 2023. Next up on our true or false. Is it okay to make Disney, Dr. Seuss, and other similar items, especially since we see lots of other shops doing it? If we do a quick look for Disney in the search bar here, we get over 1 million results of items, Disney items that are on ads, let alone all of the items, plus the ones that are not on ads. So there are tons and tons of Disney items for sale on Etsy. Dr. Seuss things, being a teacher myself, we celebrate Dr. Seuss. I wanted to make some Dr. Seuss things. And when you go to look at Etsy with Dr. Seuss on the search bar, we see there's 23,879 results with Dr. Seuss items on ads. We get similar results for Jeep. And then this one shirt is doing Disney and Jeep. Double whammo there. The answer to this one is false. No, we can't do branded things. No Disney, no Jeep, no Dr. Seuss. no sports teams, anything that belongs to a brand. We cannot do those things. So I know there's a lot of things on Etsy that are Disney themed, and those are simply gambles that those shops are taking. I do not take gambles like that in my shop. So it is false. It is not okay to do those things. And thinking also that, oh, well, I'm a small shop, no one's going to catch me, is simply not true. They will. And sometimes the little shops get caught before the big shops do. I don't get it. I don't understand why, but it does happen. It is not worth it. So false. True or false? Mugs and t-shirts are oversaturated on Etsy. There are lots of great items to sell on Etsy, and some of them are going to be a little bit easier to break into the market than others. I have gone the route of t-shirts, totes, and mugs because I wanted to go with the print-on-demand company and create a rather passive way of making income down the line, right? Well, I'm not shipping everything, where the print-on-demand company is doing the majority of the work for me. And a lot of people will say, well, it's just too saturated. You can't make money doing t-shirts or mugs. It's false. You can. You just can't be generic. You have to get very specific. You have to niche down. You have to get creative. You have to make sure, or cross niche where you're, I'm not just going to put, I might be able to sell a shirt that says teacher on it, but that's very generic. It's probably not how I'm going to break into the market. I'm probably going to break into the market making something very specific, maybe a specific theme that I know a lot of teachers are using in their classroom, because they decorate their bulletin boards, and usually teachers pick a theme for their classroom. So maybe I'm going to get in doing something related to that. Or maybe I'm going to get in doing something related to a specific event that I know teachers go to or celebrate. So this is niching down. Or maybe I'm going to break into that market by cross niching, and maybe I'm going to make items for pregnant teachers, or for teachers that are about to get married, or for teachers that are retiring. The list goes on, but you can apply this, the things that I'm saying. I'm talking about teaching because that's what I know about. But you can apply this to many different niches. You have to niche down. So you're probably not going to get into Christmas selling a shirt that says Merry Christmas. But if you niche down and hit the market from that angle, there are just limitless things that you can sell. True or false? It is best to list as many designs as possible. False! I know. If you're a regular around here, I just threw you for a loop and you're like, wait a second, what is she talking about? Before we jump into this one, I do welcome you back if you are a subscriber. I'm going to explain myself in just a second. If you're not a subscriber yet, we do hope you'll consider subscribing today and joining our community. And if you are finding value from this video, I would so appreciate if you took a second to smash that like button, as that really helps my little YouTube channel grow and really rewards me for my efforts here on YouTube. Okay, so what did I mean by false? So if you are regular around here, you know that I am usually saying you need to be doing a lot of listing. So why would I say false? Well, the reason I'm saying false is because I have found over and over again when I've chatted with people that sometimes they feel like they've got a lot of listings up, and they do. Like maybe they've got 100 listings up. But then you start looking and it's really just 10 designs maybe. And they're listing it on different colors and different mock-up photos. And while that's all fine and dandy, I am all about A/B testing. That is not the same. You can't look at that 100 listings. A shop that has 100 listings, but they duplicated the same listing, or they couldn't make up their mind between the two designs, so they just made a minor difference and listed it again. Okay, if you need to do that so that you make a decision and move quickly forward, go ahead. But if that design at first glance looks the same on a thumbnail and it's not easily identifiable as different, you're not really making a new stab at seeing if you can get attention and seeing if you could get people to stop in their scrolling. So those listings are kind of empty. They don't really count. It's, in this case, quality and quantity count. You want as many quality listings as you can get. But if you're looking at, 100 listings in your shop and feeling like you've just got so many listings, but it's 10 or 20 designs that you listed numerous times, or a design that you just changed a little bit and kept listing many times, these are not good ways for you to measure how successful you are, because you're just not, you haven't tried enough things out. So 100 good different designs out there to market is better than 300 not so good designs, or designs that are all similar to each other, if that kind of makes sense. So you really want to be thinking about, how do you want to spend your time? Do you want to spend your time getting 10 listings out on one design all in different colors? Or would you rather spend that time getting 3 listings up, but they're all different designs, they're all research-based, great designs, and they're all different, tries or different stabs, different swings at bat? Because the 7 that were just different colors, and it was like a different color shirt with the same design over and over again, compared to the 3 different research-based designs, I take those 3 designs over the 7 or the 10, whatever number I was using as my example. Here, it's really about quantity and quality, and the best way to achieve both. You don't want to dismiss quality for quantity. You want to get as many quality listings up as possible. True or false? You have to make a niche store. False, but also kind of true. Okay, let's dig into this one a little bit. It's not really that this one's true or false. It's just that there's more than one way to be successful. And that's true with a lot of things, right? So with your pricing strategy, or shipping or not, free shipping or charge for shipping, there's no actual, this is the very best way to do it. There are lots of people that are successful doing it different ways. So some people do a niche store, very successful, and that's what they teach to do because they've experienced success like that. Personally, I was taught to do the general store, and as I've built that store out more and more, meaning I've hit all of the holidays and hit different niches that sell well at different times during the year, that's helped me to round my shop out and make consistent sales throughout the year. So I'm all about the general store. Now, with that being said, I also think it's incredibly important to start with just a few niches, 2 or 3, and build them out. And I think that this is an ingredient that a lot of people miss or don't hear about. And not that people aren't talking about it, they are. But every time we listen to a video, we are going to remember about 10% of it. That's people remember about 10% of what they hear. So if you haven't heard this at least 10 times, I guess, maybe it hasn't hit you at that right moment where you remember it. Building out a niche is incredibly important. So for example, when I first got into the teaching niche, my very first sale was a teacher shirt, but I don't think I made a second sale with teacher stuff, or at least I don't really remember making another sale until 4 or 5 months later. And right at first, I should have doubled down and really made a lot of teacher items right when that first teacher shirt sold. I didn't know enough to do that at the time. I was like, oh, I'm going to make a little in this niche and a little in this niche and a little over here in this niche, and I was all over the place. And I didn't use the strategies that I'm talking about because I just didn't know yet at the time. After making regular stabs, when I got serious about, I'm a teacher and I like making teacher stuff and I'm going to sell teacher stuff, gosh darn it, and I'm just going to get in there. And I just kept trying. I was hitting all the holidays. I was hitting all of the events I know teachers would be interested in buying shirts for, and it took me time. So I really had to build that niche out and spend numerous months there before it became a stream of income, a niche that was making me income in my shop. So false, I don't think you need to have a niche store, But I do think that in order to get any traction in any spot, you have to make targeted strikes in that niche over time and really build it out. And I don't mean, okay, upload, I'm going to do bowling dad shirts. For Father's Day, I'll make a bunch of bowling shirts for dad. I'm going to do an upload of like 50 of them and then leave it. I've never experienced success like that. Okay, if you did a whole bunch, go ahead and upload them. But then now every week, make that, if that's something that you really want, like you love to bowl and you want to sell bowling shirts, then make sure that you're adding to that niche every week. And I'd say for the next like 3 months. Okay, if you didn't get any traction after the next 3 months, although if I had given up that fast for teacher stuff, I wouldn't be in the teacher niche because it took me longer than 3 months. So it does take some time. If that is something you enjoy and you're seeing research, market in the research that suggests you can make sales there, it might be worth your time to build it out. And that is what I would do. True or false? Etsy is shadow banning my listings, and that's why I'm not making sales. This is most likely false. Okay, let's talk about this one for a second. First of all, it's very, very unusual, very, very rare for you to be shadow banned, which we'll get more into that in a second. But this is really probably what 95% of people jump to. Well, I'm not getting visits, I'm not getting views, I'm not getting sales, they've shadow banned me. I've heard it a number of times. I have felt this way through that first year that I was on Etsy and just looking for someone else to blame other than myself, I guess. And I remember I was driving and listening to the Life Hacker couple, and Jaron got on and he had said something that really stuck with me. He said, if you're not making sales, either your SEO stinks or your designs stink, and it's up to you to figure out which one it is and to fix it. I remember sitting there, I was driving, and I thought, ooh, he just laid it on. There it is. And I wasn't getting the sales I wanted to get. And I was just clawing, and I felt like I was just doing anything I could to try to grab traction. And I had to think about those words. So instead of thinking, oh, it's the Etsy gods are not letting my stuff be seen. That's what's happening. I had to rethink that. No, maybe it's my SEO strategy, or maybe I haven't gotten this design thing down pat yet. Certainly I had not. So this was really something that opened my mind up hearing that. And I know that's hard to hear, but if you are really dedicated to making this happen, subscribing to a thought process of, hey, I think it's the Etsy gods, they're not letting me have this, they're limiting who's seeing my things, that really puts you into a victim way of thinking. It makes you helpless. It's a super negative place to be. It's absolutely hopeless. Why bother working really hard if you believe that the Etsy gods are limiting you? It's their fault. They're not letting anyone see your things. That takes all power away from you, and it absolutely leaves you helpless. And it leaves you in a place where you're going to fail because you're going to give up. There's no reason to keep going if you believe that your hard work will not and cannot pay off because the Etsy gods are keeping you from the success that you're deserving. So if that is a place that your mind keeps going, I really kind of quickly dismissed that. And it was that statement, hearing my YouTuber say that, was hard to hear, but it was very opening for me. It really made me take a reflective look at what I was doing. And it was kind of like a bucket of cold water, like, get over yourself, Shawna. It's not the Etsy gods that are keeping people from seeing you. Take a look at your SEO, keep practicing your designs, figure out what's going on. And at that time, I had zero idea of how to do market research. So with that all being said, let's look at what really does happen if you really do believe that Etsy's keeping people from seeing your things. Let's take a quick look at that. From the research that I've found on this topic, Etsy doesn't actually shadow ban shops, but your shop and your listings on rare occasion can get de-indexed. So we could kind of think of Etsy and all of our listings as being like in a filing cabinet. And so when someone puts something in the search bar, it's like getting that file out of the cabinet. Those files are coming up in front for the customers. If you get de-indexed, you're out of the filing cabinet, you're sitting over to the side. You don't have a chance of coming up in search results. So you can actually check for this by, if you put your shop name in the search bar and you're able to find your shop, it comes up, then you're indexed. If you're able to find your listing by putting, like, take the entire title that you put it in the search bar, if you're able to find your listing, then you are indexed. If you can't find it, have a friend try. From the research that I've done, on the rare occasion that you still can't find it, it doesn't necessarily mean that you are, it's not 100% that you are not indexed. But if you are not finding yourself and you're believing yourself not to be indexed, you are going to want to contact Etsy. And you are going to have to be very persistent, and you are going to have to probably contact them over and over again in order to get the issue resolved. There's actually a lot more to say on that topic, but if you are interested in a video on that, just let me know down in the comments. And we do have time for one more true or false. True or false, is it time for Tucker to take away? And yes, it is. But hopefully I'll see you here in the next one in just a minute.